I gotta say, this is unbelievably exciting. I absolutely love when something that was just a rumor is proven to be true, even though in this case, it took over a decade. Now, for those that don't know, just this week, we got a confirmation of the fact that there was indeed a Justice League game in development. And not only was it in development, it looks like it was actually quite far along in development indeed. Now, for those of you that don't know, there was actually going to be a Justice League movie that was going to be released in 2009. Yes, it's kind of crazy to think how different of a world would we live in if in 2009 we got a Justice League movie instead, or right in tandem with the MCU taking off. But apparently it wasn't just going to be a movie, because there was a tie-in video game. And I gotta say, it looks like it was going to be, at the very least, very interesting, because there's some really cool stuff that was shared as part of this reveal. Now, first and foremost, I obviously want to go on ahead and give the person who shared these images a shout out. This is Jonathan Gwynn, and he went ahead and posted this on his ArtStation account. And as part of his post, he actually wrote a little blurb as well, which reads the following. I was the art director and the main level artist on this game, which was built to coincide with the Justice League movie by George Miller. Yes, that George Miller. Yes, the one that made Mad Max. He was going to be making a Justice League movie, which sounds awesome, by the way. The movie was eventually canceled along with the game, which is unfortunate since it was fairly far along in development. And he's not kidding when he says fairly far along. I mean, the amount of stuff that was revealed here is absolutely stunning, from frame rate, from locations to characters, and much more. So we're going to go on ahead and dive into all of it. First and foremost, let's kick things off by taking a look at some of the level elements that were completed, because there's a ton of really cool locations. So here you have Zamaron looking very stylish. By the way, it's also kind of crazy to see that in the bottom left corner, it looks like the game was running at close to 30 FPS, which again indicates that the game was far along, because usually those kind of optimization things where they actually go through and make the game run at 30 frames or 60 frames per second is usually something that's done very far along in the actual development cycle of a video game, which once again gives credibility to the fact that obviously Jonathan mentioned that this game was actually far along. But it's really cool to see Zamaron here, because obviously it implies some appearances from some of the other Lantern cores in this game, which is obviously really cool. Then we have the Flash Museum, which looks incredible. This also gives us a bit of an idea of what the user interface would have looked like, because in the top left corner, you can clearly see what looks like a health bar and some sort of a depleted ability bar below that, as well as obviously the character that is selected, in this case being Batman. And speaking of Batman, let's head on over to Wayne Enterprises. This is the rooftop of Wayne Enterprises, looking pretty stylish and cool. Although you would expect maybe Wayne Enterprises to have some solar panels on the rooftops. But then again, now that I think about it, it's Gotham. It rains all the time. There is no sunny days. Next up, we jump to the Gotham Alley, or I guess the Gotham Alley that is right in front of Wayne Industries. But you can see Batman clearly battling some sort of rogues there. It's interesting because they have kind of like a glowing face expression, so that's intriguing. I can't really decipher which enemies that would be, but if you know, let me know in the comments section below. Here's another really cool image of the Flash Museum. This time you have Flash in control as your character, but you can also see all the different rogues around the Flash, which I think just looks so freaking cool, and obviously kind of teases the idea of some of the enemies that we might have seen and we could have battled during this. Here's another very ominous shot of Gotham's rooftops. Next, we have an image of the Wayne Enterprises entrance. It is really fascinating because on this particular image, you can see a very different looking user interface in the top left corner, where it seems like there's some sort of a score. The health bar looks obviously different, no longer displaying an image of the character you're controlling. It looks like the ability bar has been split into two separate bars now, which is interesting because it kind of almost gives you a bit of insight into the development process, where maybe they went back and forth between choosing which of those user interfaces to go with. There's another really beautiful image of the Flash Museum with a lot of really cool Flash costumes on display. Here's another image featuring the previously shown user interface, and of course you have the interior of Wayne Enterprises. Plus, as you can see down below there, that is Batman looking at you, staring at you very ominously. Although, am I the only one that feels like his head looks way too elongated? I mean, bro legit looks out here like he is part of Megamind. Here's an exciting one. This is an image of the Coast City Mall, which again kind of makes me think that we would have gone to so many different unique places here. It's really, really exciting to think about what the movie would have been as well if it would have featured all of these different locations that are so iconic for the different members of the Justice League itself. Here's another really cool image of the Flash Museum. This is the bottom floor of the Flash Museum, once again featuring a lot of really cool Flash artifacts and references all throughout. Here's another image of the exterior of Gotham with, once again, Batman standing there, giving us kind of a really cool idea of the scale of the levels themselves, where you can see relative to Batman just how huge the buildings really are. And with that in mind, let's dive into the more exciting side of things, because here are the character model reveals and they look really cool. So first and foremost, here we have one of several Batman images. I really like the Bat costume. I actually think it's really cool. It kind of reminds me of a very Batman comic booky look from the New 52. So I don't mind the costume whatsoever. The only problem I have, and it could be just the lighting in this image, is the eyebrows, because it legit looks like he has white eyebrows spray painted over top of his cowl. So it just kind of looks a little bit goofy, at least in my opinion. It does look like there's a shade version of Batman as well, which almost looks like kind of a glow-in-the-dark variant. It's also very ominous that there's this skull hovering behind Bruce at all times. Wow. And then the last Batman character model that was revealed was actually Justice Batman. Oh, but worry not, we got a bunch more characters to look at. So next up, we have Superman, looking very, very cool and classic. I'm actually surprised that they went as classic as they did, particularly with the red underwear over top. That's obviously a look that a lot of people don't like in live action, so it would have been interesting to see if that would have been the costume that we saw in the movie as well. Here you can see Hal Jordan, Green Lantern, looking very cool. And last, for the hero side of things, you have Wonder Woman with the Lasso of Truth, looking very cool as well. Oh, but worry not, we're not done yet, because there's a lot of villains to discuss. Now, it is very interesting because one of the villains that seems to have been very prominently featured as part of this particular game would have been Bizarro. Yes, I know, kind of bizarre that he would be selected, but he does look really freaking cool. So here we have the regular Bizarro look. Then you have Bizarro Clark Kent looking very, very cool, although somehow I guess he also reads his newspapers upside down. And then you have Bat-Zarro, who I don't know why, but for whatever reason, especially the image behind this Bat-Zarro design legitimately looks so much like the Batman Who Laughs that it's freaking me out. Because of course, this was years before the Batman Who Laughs was actually introduced. I really, really like this design for Bane. I think he looks so cool and very, very menacing. I think they captured everything from the comics while giving it their own cool, unique spin. And another character that looks super duper cool and very menacing for sure is actually Solomon Grundy, who would have also appeared apparently in this movie / game. Now, supposedly the main villains of this Justice League project would have been two of them, and that is Lady Shiva and one more character that we'll look at in one moment. But first and foremost, here you have Lady Shiva, and it looks like she would have sported at the very least two different costumes within the game. So you have two different costumes, one kind of black and gold attire with the katana swords, and then of course you have the red and gold attire that seems to maybe also be some sort of like an upgraded variant of the costume where she's sporting just one katana instead. But the other major villain was supposed to be General Zod. And I gotta say, this is where you kind of have to scratch your head because, I mean, this just looks very strange. It almost looks like something that we would see in the Dark Knights of Metal storyline. It just does not strike me as General Zod whatsoever. It's such a different take on the character and such a different look, especially when we look at everything else. Everything else so far has been very, very accurate to the comics. It almost feels a little too accurate where it's like, is this going to translate really well into video games and especially obviously into the live action side of things? But apparently this is what General Zod would have looked like in this world. But on the bright side, another villain that was showcased is actually Mongol, and I gotta say, this one looks freaking phenomenal. You want to talk about a really cool transition from the comics into live action / video games? This looks super duper cool. And arguably saving the best for last, we got a nice little duo showcase here of both Professor Zoom and Reverse Flash. Now, it is just mind-boggling when you really try to think about how many villains we just discussed and the fact that they were all supposedly planned for this game. Wow. So there you have it, guys. That is the Justice League video game that we were supposed to get based on the 2009 Justice League George Miller film. So this would have been a tie-in movie game. Yes, that obviously kind of sets off a lot of like red alarms because for the most part, especially at this point in time, most tie-in movie games were kind of terrible. Let's be quite honest. But I like the idea that this one seems like it would have taken us to so many different locations of the DC universe. I really like a lot of the character models and designs, and I would have loved if this one actually did see the light of day. It's also kind of a bummer just to think that a game like this was so far along in development and wasn't actually released, and all the time, effort, and resources that went into this were all just thrown under the rug. Let me know if you guys like these images. Let me know if you would love to see a Justice League game in the future in the comment section below. Have an absolutely fantastic day. Peace out. See you later, alligators. Bye, guys.